Welcome to Family History Mysteries, a podcast that tells the stories uncovered through family history research, the unexpected stories of everyday people. I am an avid family historian who has been compiling my family tree for over 15 years, with nearly 20,000 people recorded in my trees.
Episode 72. The Actor. Reg Lye was an Australian actor who worked extensively in Australia and in England. He was married to my grandmother's first cousin, Ruth Clyne. Reginald Thomas Lye was born on the 13th of October 1912 in Sydney. He was the firstborn of Joseph Richard Jubilee Lye and Susan Agnes Bellita. Reg's great-grandfather Robert Lye had immigrated from England on the 26th of July 1849 on the Mary Ballantyne to Sydney. Alongside Robert was his wife, Caroline, their firstborn Charles, and two children from Caroline's first marriage, Daniel and Maria. Reg's grandfather, Joseph Robert, known as Robert, was the first of their children born in Australia in 1850 at the Field of Mars, Parramatta. Young Robert was admitted to the orphan school in February 1858 with his brother Henry, and they were released back to their mother, Caroline, in February 1860. Why they were admitted to the orphan school? Well, I found a few clues with that. In November 1860, their father, Robert Lye, was, upon the evidence of constables, Ardell and McCulloch, convicted of keeping a disorderly house in Sorrel Street, Parramatta, and was sentenced to 3 months' imprisonment with hard labour at Parramatta Jail. Caroline was also jailed at Parramatta for keeping a house of ill fame in January 1861. So it's quite likely that with Robert and Caroline running a home of ill repute, it could have been a clear reason as to why those siblings were put into an orphan school for 2 years. Robert Lye Sr. died in the Parramatta Benevolent Asylum aged 57 in December 1870. Reg's grandfather, Joseph Robert, his younger sister, Mary Ann, had a record in 1878. It says, child dropping. About 10 p.m. on the 22nd of July, a male infant about 2 weeks old, apparently much neglected, dressed in a white muslin frock trimmed with embroidery, new white flannel petticoat and scarlet flannel square, was found by Mr. Lewis Spencer on the doorstep of his residence in Castlereagh Street. A young man named Rudolph Decker, residing at Elizabeth Street, was passing Mr. Spencer's house at the time it was discovered, but did not see any person in the neighbourhood. On the child's clothing was found a note of which the following is a copy. Born 1st of July to be called Harold. Its father is rich. It will be claimed some day. Its mother is broken-hearted. Do not lose trace. Keep this. The child is at the Benevolent Asylum. Since identified, it is the child of Mary Ann Lye, who was discharged from the Benevolent Asylum, Pitt Street South, on the 3rd of July, at which institution the child was born on the 18th of June. Mary Ann Lye is 18 years of age, 5 foot high, slight build, pale complexion, thin features, large Roman nose, has a peculiar habit of twitching her eyes when speaking, auburn hair cut short when discharged from the Benevolent Asylum. She was dressed in a shabby brown wincey dress and black hat. She has a brother named William Lye working for Mr. Terry, Box Hill near Parramatta, where she was supposed to have gone after leaving the Benevolent Asylum. Her mother lives near or in Parramatta. The child's name is William Joseph Lye. So Reg's great-grandmother and great-aunt, Caroline Lye and Mary Ann Lye, were mentioned only 1 month later in the police court. August 19th, Caroline Lye and Mary Ann Lye were brought up charged with vagrancy. The apprehending constable stated he had found the prisoners, 2 noted bad characters, on the Pennant Hills Road at 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. They had no place to go and he accordingly locked them up. The prisoners were sent to jail for 3 months. Mary Ann also had short stints in jail at Darlinghurst. It was noted in the Police Gazette that she had been released in May 1880, May 1881 and February 1883. Another brother, Henry Lye, put an ad in the paper in September 1881. Mary Ann Lye, please send your address to your brother, Henry Lye, care of P. Hackney, Esquire, Barago, via Rookley. Anyone knowing her whereabouts will oblige by communicating. On the 9th of July 1884, another reference to Caroline Lye. Caroline Lye has been locked up for her protection in Parramatta Jail and was discharged. In February 1885, Caroline's now known by her maiden name, Caroline Davis. An old woman who has been locked up for protection was sent to the Benevolent Asylum. But by the 17th of March 1885, Caroline Davis was sentenced to 3 months imprisonment for vagrancy. Again in June 1885, Caroline Davis, a very old woman, was charged with vagrancy and sent to jail for another 3 months. And in her time in jail, she died in September 1885. Reg's grandfather, Joseph Robert, married Annie Sutton, also known as Elizabeth Sutton, in Wellington, New South Wales. They had 9 children. Their 6th child, Joseph Jr., was Reg Lye's father. Joseph Richard Jubilee Lye was born in September 1887 in Wellington. Joseph had 2 children with Susan Agnes Belita. I cannot find a marriage record for Joseph and Susan was also known as Sybil, and she used this name on all official records, including census records. And their 2 sons were Reginald Thomas, so Reg Lye, and he also had a brother, Alan Joseph. Interestingly, on Alan Joseph's birth certificate, it states that his father was Joseph. However, it states that his mother was Olive May Burks. So he's recorded as being born on the 16th of February 1916 in Orange. Alan enlisted in the RAAF on the 15th of September 1943 as a flight sergeant, and he is recorded as having operational service in Melbourne, Canada and Brisbane. He listed Sybil Lye as his mother, and at the time of his enlistment she is living at her home, Virginia, in Palmerston Avenue in Glebe. And what is interesting on Alan Joseph Lye's RAAF documents is that there was an aircrew mustering and there have been particulars that have been changed. So the 16th of February 1916 is his birth date and has been ticked. His place of birth, Orange, has been ticked. However, his surname has been changed. So it says Alan Joseph Lye. Lye has been removed and Langtree has been put in its place. Father's name, instead of deceased, it says Joseph Arthur Allen Raymond. And mother's maiden name, Sybil, has been crossed out and Olive May Birtles has been added in. There is also a statutory declaration written and it says, I, the undersigned Alan Joseph Langtree of Palmerston Avenue, Glebe Point, Venetian blind maker, do hereby solemnly and sincerely declare that I am identical with Alan Joseph Lye, and during my period of service with the RAAF, I wish to be known as Alan Joseph Lye. So based on that document, he's well aware of his birth name. I'm wondering whether Alan has actually been adopted. Alan married Patricia Sophia Dean on the 24th of March 1950 in Sydney. And he's listed as a factory manager living at Darlinghurst in 1958 with his wife. And then from the 1963 census, he's listed as living at Griffith. And he's listed as a company director with his wife as a stenographer. And Alan is recorded on family trees as dying on the 9th of September 1998 at the age of 82, and he's buried in Wagga. And family trees do not have Alan or Patricia having any children. Joseph was a carter and they lived at Toxteth, New South Wales. Sybil's family was from Bombala. She was of German descent. Her grandparents emigrated from Lehman in 1855. Her grandfather and father were stonemasons and her grandfather was naturalised in 1872. Sybil was one of 15 children. Joseph died in October 1938 when he was 51. And in 1943 through to 1949, Sybil was living with Reg's brother Alan and then living at the same address alone in 1954. And Sybil died in 1957, aged 65. Reg Lye was born on the 13th of October 1912. His birth certificate has Susan or Sybil listed, but no father listed, so this could further indicate that Joseph and Susan were not married. In 1921, Reg was listed as attending Bombala Public School, so at the age of 9. So either Susan was living with her family at this time, or possibly Reg was living with his grandparents or extended family. However, in 1934, Reg is listed as living with his parents at Toxteth and working as a mechanic, and he was 22 at that time. Reg married Phyllis Elmer Bessie in Canterbury, New South Wales on the 2nd of November 1935 when he was 23 and Phyllis 19. They had a daughter Suzanne on the 27th of September 1937. Reg enlisted in the Citizen Air Force, and prior to his enlistment he'd been working as a lorry driver in Pyrmont and in Sydney. He enlisted on the 26th of August 1942 as a truck driver, and he was discharged in December 1945. Phyllis and Reg were living at Heathcote, New South Wales at the time of his enlistment. On the 4th of October 1946, it was recorded that Reg and Phyllis had divorced. Service life blamed in the divorce court. A husband left his wife after his discharge from the RAAF because the war had changed his whole outlook on life, according to evidence in the divorce court today. Phyllis Elmer Lye, 30, King Street, Heathcote, obtained a court order directing her husband Reginald Lye, 34, of Glebe, to return to her within 21 days. Mrs. Lye said her husband had written and told her he was not going to live with her again because his whole outlook had been changed by the war. He said men of the RAAF had not lived normal lives for so long that he could never settle down again. However, by December 1948, Reg had married Ruth Margaret Clyne. Ruth was the daughter of David Leslie Clyne and Mary Ann Bayliss and was my grandmother's first cousin. She was born in Deniliquin, New South Wales in November 1919 and was 7 years younger than Reg when they married. Ruth had an interest in performing at a young age. She was in the annual wattle dances in Deniliquin as a child, and in 1940 Ruth went to Melbourne to train as a nurse and graduated as a trainee nurse and went to Corowa for 4 years, and she graduated in December 1944. Interestingly, on the 5th of October 1945, there was a record of an RAAF concert party occurring at Corowa. It says, a bright and entertaining show. A concert staged by a RAAF concert unit at the Rex Theatre on Tuesday night was well received by the Corowa audience, which thoroughly enjoyed the non-stop program of magic, songs, sketches, dances, ventriloquism and instrumental items. The life of the company was Reg Lye, who never failed to bring a roar from the audience with his comedy sketches, in which he was well supported by other members of the cast. So it's quite possible that Ruth and Reg may have met whilst he was in Corowa. Reg was mentioned as doing comedy impressions as a guest artist on Sydney radio in October 1946, and he was also featured in plays in Sydney at this time. In 1947, Ruth was a midwife in Sydney. Reg starred in the movie The Eureka Stockade in 1949 that also starred Chips Rafferty and Peter Finch. Reg was working as a mechanic at this time, and then the couple moved to Gemelong Weir near Forbes, where Reg got a job working there as a mechanic. Reg and Ruth were heavily involved in the Forbes Musical and Drama Society from May 1949 until July 1951. And there were some articles mentioning Reg and also a little on Ruth at this time. In November 1949, Reg was part of a play called George and Margaret, and the headline says, Reg Lye Outstanding. The Forbes Amateur Musical and Dramatic Society gave an excellent presentation on Friday and Saturday night in the 3-act comedy George and Margaret. Before good audiences in the town hall, it proved that in Reg Lye we have one of the best amateur actors in Australia with us. It was refreshing to find, with the droll humour, an amateur so perfectly natural as Lye. Lye is well up to professional standard and has a successful career ahead. He was perfectly at home in the difficult part, and all applause, which came his way, was well deserved. By February 1950, another mention, talented actor in charge of new play. When the Forbes Musical and Dramatic Society entrusted to Reg Lye the mammoth task of organising and producing something new and altogether different in the way of stage comedies, it little dreamed that within a very short period a talented cast would have been assembled and polished almost to the point of perfection. Reg has gone ahead and from a script bristling with technical difficulties has built a masterpiece of wit and humour, life and action in flesh and blood. His production methods provide some interesting lessons for the Society. Reg brings to Forbes a wealth of experience garnered from dozens of radio and stage shows in this city. Incidentally, you'll see him on the screen too when the film Eureka Stockade comes to town. And on the 7th of March 1950, Reg Lye and others motored to Orange on Sunday to attend the convention of Western Dramatic Societies. Mr. Reg Lye was elected the first president of the newly formed league. In April 1951, one of the most interesting features of the Society's contribution to the Jubilee celebrations will be the full stage presentation of an Australian play produced by Reg Lye and written by one of Australia's leading playwrights, Jim Crawford, who incidentally is a close friend of the producer. Rocket Range is a powerful and unusual play set in the heart of the so-called dead heart of Australia. Among the trees and rocks of a small valley, the Aborigines have lived since time immemorial, sheltered from the storms and the conflicts of the outside world. The curtain rises on the present tribe peacefully grouped around its campfires. Before it falls, the white man has evaded the sacred territory and imposed on the bewildered natives and the sterner aspects of civilization. And Ruth was cast as an Aboriginal girl in the play Rocket Range alongside Reg, and he played the role as an Aboriginal elder. They had their eldest son, Michael Reginald Lye, on the 3rd of February 1950, and the family left the Gemelong district in July 1951 and moved to Sydney. And there was a small article in Forbes outlining their departure. M&D loss. I feel impelled to write of the loss to the district of Reg Lye, who is leaving his job at Gemelong Weir for new pastures. Those who have enjoyed his performances on the M&D stage will also miss this bright personality, who on and off the stage has been universally liked. It has always been the case of through hell and high water for Reg when there was a show on. Maybe the statement is a little ambiguous, but friends will remember that there was nothing Reg would not do to get along to play his part in the M&D activities. Neither personal inconvenience nor ego motivated this sterling player. The show was the thing. Personally, I shall be sorry to see Reg and Ruth Clyne leave the district, and they did have a farewell for them. So once Reg went back to Sydney, he was one of the busiest actors of the 1950s. He appeared in a majority of locally shot features at the time, as well as stage and radio. Lee Robinson called him one of the best character actors in Australia. He was in the ABC radio serial Blue Hills in 1955, and also in 1955 he shot a film over at Papua New Guinea called Walk into Paradise, where he played a prospector. In this time they had their second son, Philip Leslie Lye. In 1958 to 1963 they were living at Coogee, and Reg was working as a salesman to supplement his acting income, and he also acted in Dust in the Sun at this time. Other films that he featured in were Stowaway and Restless and the Damned, that was partly filmed in Tahiti. In September 1961, Reg went over to England to perform in an Australian play in London. And it says, London, the controversial Australian play, One Day of the Year, will be presented at Stratford-on-Avon for a limited season. 3 actors from the original Australian production, Ron Hadrick, Nita Pannell and Reg Lye, are on their way to Britain for the production. The play is being presented by the Australian Elizabethan Theatre Trust and others. And while in England, he filmed Reunion Day, which was a television program. And there were some reminiscences in the paper in regards to Reg's time over in England. He said, I went to see a trio of Australians in the Earl Court Bedsitter. Senior among them was Reg Lye. Back after his part in King Rat in Hollywood, Reg hardly had time to put down one script before picking up another. Zed Carr's Dr. Finlay's Casebook, For Whom the Bell Tolls, a BBC radio series. But how was it at the beginning? Reg came to London in the one sure way, with a part and play fixed, the One Day of the Year. He stayed because the possibilities of work seemed great. Then the actors went on strike. Reg took jobs house repairing. After the strike, it took him 3 months to get acting work again. There is, says Reg, a world of difference between an agent who tolerates you and one who wants you. It took a year to find an agent who wanted Reg. Reg appeared in the Roger Moore Saint episodes, The Loving Brothers in 1964, The Smart Detective in 1965, and The Old Treasure Story in 1965, and with Ian Ogilvy in the Return of the Saint episode, The Arrangement in 1978. In 1965, he also got a small part in the Hollywood film King Rat, set in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. So at the time, there were 10 times as many roles for men than for women in the UK. In 1966, he starred in some English television shows, Mrs. Thursday and The Wednesday Play. And Ruth and the boys must have joined him by the latest by early 1966, as in August 1966, Ruth wrote a letter to my grandmother outlining how they were living in Hampshire and renovating a home. She also outlined how Reg was working on a film in Spain. This is quite likely the film Fathom that had Raquel Welch featured in it, in which Reg played Mr. Trivers. She was clearly a little homesick for Australia, as she asked for my grandfather to send her a gum leaf in the mail, and she also said it'd be the first summer coming up since she was 5 years old that she wouldn't be swimming. In 1967, Reg featured in A Challenge for Robin Hood, and he also featured in the Doctor Who series as Griffin the Chef in The Enemy of the World in 1968. Reg and Ruth's oldest son, Michael, died at Aldershot, Hampshire, England in February 1972, aged only 22. They returned to Australia in the 1970s when the film industry was reaching its peak. In 1973, he was in The Age of Leo Trotsky Part 3, and in 1975, Reg won a Film Institute Award for his role in the movie Sunday Too Far Away, in which he played Old Garth. In 1980, they're living at Richmond, New South Wales, and Reg's occupation is now officially listed as an actor in the census. He featured in the movie The Killing of Angel Street and also Freedom, a South Australian film production in 1982, and Molly in 1983. He also featured in ABC TV's The Boy in the Bush, where he was the companion of Old Man Grant. And Reg died in March 1987 in Windsor, New South Wales, aged 74. Ruth died in January 2006 in Richmond, New South Wales, aged 86.
If you are interested in sharing your story on my podcast Family History Mysteries, please go to my Facebook page and send me a message. If you would like some assistance in filling in the gaps in your family tree to see what mysteries you solve, please get in touch. And don't forget, you can have early access to episodes by subscribing, and you'll also gain access to bonus episodes.